Assalamualaikum and hi everyone.
Welcome to our very exciting case study on the coronavirus pandemic and the global economy.
Don't worry, it's not another depressing COVID story. Well, maybe just a little, but we promise to make it fun.
Let's
Let's go!
go! Hello everyone, I'm Affzan and I will start us off with a quick introduction to COVID-19 before diving into the main economic issues. So, rewind back to December 2019 in Wuhan, China, a new virus called SARS-CoV-2 appeared by January 13, 2020. The WHO declared it as a global emergency. Just a few weeks later, on March 11, it was officially labeled as a pandemic. Thanks to the international travel, it spread across the border faster than the virus detox dances. COVID-19 spread mainly through droplets and aerosol. Symptoms range from mild, like fever, cough, tightness, or loose smell, to really severe complications like pneumonia, organ failure, and sadly death. But here the key point. It wasn't just a health crisis. It disrupted economy, school, healthcare system, and even people interact socially. Now, Malaysia's story. The first case came on 25 January 2020 when Chinese tourists tested positive in Johor. Things seemed under control at first until the street Battalion Mosque gathering in March 2020, which became a super spread event and changed everything. This forced government to launch the Movement Control Order or MCO on 18 March 2020. Suddenly, school, university, and businesses closed. Travel was banned, and the policies robot pop up everywhere. For Malaysia, this was historic. The first time we experienced such strict nationwide restriction. Over time, Malaysia faced multiple waves, with daily cases hitting tens of thousands by 2021. Hospital overflow, frontliner were exhausted, and quarantine center has to be set up. To fight back, the National Immunization Program (BICK) started in February 2021, supported by MySejahtera for tracking and vaccination record. By late 2021, Malaysia had one of the highest vaccination rates in Southeast Asia, which finally helped us reopen economy and move into endemic phase in April 2022. So that's the background. Now let's talk about the main issue of the COVID-19 crisis on the global economy. Government everywhere faced tough dilemma whether to protect life or protect the economy. Most chose help first with lockdown and restriction, but the main business shut down and unemployment skyrocketed. As you can see here, global GDP took a nosedive. Europe and the US fell into deep recession. Asia slowly sharply, and developing region were hit hardest. Basically, the whole world economy failed the test together. But the pain wasn't equal. Small businesses and low-income workers were hit hardest, while big companies and digital platforms like Amazon, Zoom is thriving. This created an unequal recovery. Rich versus poor, big versus small. Then come trade disruption. Port were, port were clogged, container was stuck, and the supply chain froze. Your Lazada parcel delayed for months. This chart shows how world trade collapsed in 2020 during lockdown, but bounced back sharply in 2021 with reopening. Still, the recovery was uneven. Rich countries rebounded faster than the poor one. So, to sum up, COVID-19 wasn't just a virus, it was a shock that crashed GDP, collapsed trade, worsened inequality, and left government drowning in debt. Or, in simple terms, 2020 was the year we learned how to bake banana bread, but also the year the world economy almost broke. Next, I will pass it to Syukry. Let's see what he will say about why the inflation rose during COVID-19 and how the government responded. Shuk, are you ready, bro?
Thanks Affzan for the heads up. And heck, yes, I'm ready. Hi, I'm Syukry and I will explain why inflation rose during COVID-19 and how the government responded. Now, here's something weird. Usually, when a recession hits, prices go down, but during COVID, prices went up. That's right. Inflation rose instead of falling. Let's break down why. As you can see from this graph, global inflation was relatively stable before 2020, but during the pandemic, it suddenly shot up. Why? Two reasons: limited supply and high demand. On the supply side, factories were closed, shipping was delayed, and oil and food price increased. This means fewer goods in the market but a higher cost. At the same time, we had the great resignation, especially in the US, where millions of workers quit or refused to return to unsafe jobs. This graph shows how labor participation dropped while wage increased. Higher wage mean higher costs for businesses, and those costs were passed on to consumers in the form of higher price. On the demand side, when lockdowns ended, people wanted to spend, and because governments had injected so much stimulus money, households actually had extra cash. Here you can see the breakdown. Supply chain, bottlenecks, rising energy costs, and wage increase all worked together to drive inflation higher. And let's not forget monetary policy and global commodities, which also play a huge role. Central banks around the world cut interest rate to almost zero and launched quantitative easing, basically pumping trillions of dollars into the economy. This keep financial markets stable, but it also means more money chasing fewer goods, adding even more inflation pressure. At the same time, commodity prices rebounded sharply. Oil prices, for example, went from just $20 a barrel in April 2020 to over $70 in 2021. Food prices also rose because of fertilizer shortage, bad weather, and export bans. All of this shock filtered through supply chains, rising living costs worldwide. And finally, if you look at it from an economist perspective, here's the ADAS curve. The aggregate supply curve shift left because of supply shortage, while aggregate demand shift right because of stimulus spending. The result, prices went up, inflation, while output stayed unstable. Now, what did government do about all this? They responded with the biggest economic intervention in modern history. In the US, the CARES Act was worth $2 trillion followed by American Rescue Plan with $1.9 trillion more. That's direct cash, unemployment benefits, and business loans. The EU also launched a 715 billion euro recovery fund, a historic move because it was first time EU country borrow money together. On the monetary side, central banks cut interest rates to near zero and launched quantitative easing to pump money into markets. This show how money supply spiked during the pandemic. More money in circulation helped prevent collapse but also add to inflation pressure. Government also pour billions into health spending, vaccines, PPE, hospitals, while expanding social safety nets like food aid, eviction bans, and family assistance. But the cost was huge. As this graph shows, government debt jumped to levels not seen since World War II. Rich countries could handle it, but developing countries struggle creating an uneven recovery. So, in short, inflation rose because of both supply shocks and demand surge, and governments responded with record-breaking spending and debt. Rich countries managed, but poorer nations, they struggled. This led to an uneven recovery worldwide. Alright, I did my part. I will pass to our friend Fatin. Fatin, it's your turn.
Hi, I'm Fatin, and thanks Shukri, I'm ready. Now, let's ask the big question. Was COVID just a pause or did it change business forever? Well, the truth is, it was a game changer. We've already seen how digitalizations exploded. Zoom, Shopee, GrabFood all became part of daily life. Work culture shifted to hybrid, supply chains were restructured, and ESG values became more important. Here, you can see how digital companies carried off the market back up after the crash. If you were in tech, you are thrive. If you're in tourism, not so much. But let me give you a real world example of how policies were a game changer. The debate between Sweden and Norway. Sweden basically said no lockdown, no problem. Restaurants, schools, even bars stayed open. Mask? Nah, discouraged. For a while, their top health official, Anders Tegnell, became famous worldwide for this maverick approach. Supporters said it was great for freedoms and the economy. But look, what happened? By mid 2020, Sweden had twice as many infections and 5 times as many as deaths as its Nordic neighbors. Later that year, cases spiked so badly that Sweden was forced to bring in restrictions anyway. And here's the kicker. Economically, it didn't even work. Sweden's GDP shrank by 2.8 in 2020, while Norway, which actually had stricter restrictions, only shrank 0.8%. So the gamble felt on both fronts, public health and the economy. And here is the important part. The economy. Sweden's GDP dropped by negative 2.8%, while Norway, which has stricter restrictions, only shrank by negative 0.8%. So, Sweden's gamble didn't save the economy at all. Fear of the virus itself stopped people from spending and investing. In the end, stricter rules actually protected both lives and economic confidence better. This shows that policy choices were a game changer too. Business, consumers' behavior, and investors' trust were all shaped by how government handled the crisis. So, overall, COVID wasn't just a pause. It's a reset how business work, how supply chains are built, and even how we think about government policies in relation to the economy. Now, before I close, let's bring the focus back home. Malaysia. In conclusion, the COVID-19 pandemic left a huge impact on Malaysia's public health, economy, education, and even daily life. From the first case in January 2020, we faced overwhelming challenges, surging infections, hospital under pressure, and strict MCO restrictions that changed how millions lived and worked. But Malaysia pulled through. The MCO, the MySejahtera app, and especially the National COVID-19 Immunizations Program, BICK, were crucial in reducing cases and saving lives. These measures also showed how technology, vaccinations, and public awareness are vital too in managing crises. The pandemic became a turning point, pushing us to strengthen our healthcare system and adapt new ways of working, studying, and living. And now, even as we move into the endemic phase, the lessons remain. COVID-19 proved that unity, disciplines, and resilience are key to overcoming global challenges. So, while this pandemic will always be remembered as one of the hardest times in Malaysia's history, it also stands as proof of our strength and adaptability in facing future uncertainties.
So, in summary, COVID 19 was more than just a health crisis.
It caused inflation, massive government debt, and revealed how fragile our supply chain are.
But it also speed up digitalizations, reshaped business, and shifted global economic power.
Thanks for watching our presentation video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and
Remember, always unmute your mic before speaking on Zoom.
Bye bye.
bye.